Should you buy Batman Arkham Origins in 2021? Batman Arkham Origins is the origin story of the Arkham games and the only Arkham game developed by a different studio. I remember playing through Batman Arkham Origins back in 2013 and genuinely enjoyed it despite the obvious flaws. But the critics really did not like what they played, so it's going to be interesting to hear what you guys think about Arkham Origins. Leave your comments down below. There are no spoilers in this review. We'll be talking narrative and gameplay. I'm pretty sure some of you are really sick of hearing that if you've been here for a while. Thank you all for 4,000 subscribers. My dog can eat more food than ever because of you guys. Thank you. Batman Arkham Origins jumps straight into the action, wasting no time, introducing you to Alfred and the various villains that will be appearing, like Killer Croc, Bane, Copperhead, and many others. Basically the Sinister Six for the Arkham games, and I really like that premise. Batman is clearly not as experienced and is far more brutal compared to the other Arkham games, and I love that. Speaking of brutal, have you guys seen that new Batman trailer? It looks great. The main villain of the game, at least what was advertised, is Black Mask, who puts a bounty on Batman's head, causing all these villains to come and hunt Batman for a considerable amount of cash. Now, while this plot is very generic, it takes a lot of twists and turns, along with some genuinely great moments, especially when it comes to the script. There is a line in this game that is just awesome and was delivered so damn well.
The only thing between the innocent and the predator. No, not maybe. I am. When the mugger or the thief stops to think twice, that is fear. That is what I am. That is why they hired assassins, because I am the reason the criminals breathe easier when the sun rises. So no, Alfred, I am not in over my head. Tonight will be my end, but it will be theirs.
The story really focuses on showing the inexperienced side of Batman, while also showing that he has always been effective due to his desperation to clean up Gotham's streets. The best villains here are easily Bane and a villain I can't mention because of spoilers, so unfortunately a lot of the villains that are used either get sidelined for side quests or are really forgettable, like Firefly. Firefly is just one boss battle that is really repetitive and you forget about it almost instantly, whereas one of the boss fights actually spice up the camera angles, which is the Bane boss fight, and add a little bit more style so you don't feel like you're doing the same boss fights every time. Now, Arkham Origins is fully focused on boss fights, but I will speak more about that in the gameplay section, but I want to make it very clear that the boss fights here do not live up to the Mr. Freeze boss fight in Arkham City. Don't go in expecting massively crafted boss fights, think more like the Bane boss fight from Arkham Asylum, which isn't bad, but it's not as good as the Mr. Freeze fight, if you know what I mean. Arkham Origins is the first and only Arkham game to be developed by Warner Brothers, and you can really feel that when it comes to how the story is told. There's a lot more cinematics this time around, and they do often look a bit rough, especially when it comes to the resolution. But I can say without a doubt that a lot of care went into crafting the story and how it would be told. The problem is there's really too many villains to give time to, and it really starts to drag towards the middle section of the story. I often found myself more invested into the soundtrack of Arkham Origins than the actual story being told, and that's not an insult. The soundtrack for Arkham Origins is bloody brilliant, might be my favourite soundtrack of the Arkham series. The pacing is pretty spot on apart from the middle section, which really only lasts about an hour, and I think Arkham Origins feels really well paced because of how much it leans into the detective elements of the character of Batman, and I really enjoy those aspects. Mystery is key to keeping people invested into stories, and the information in Arkham Origins is delivered to you in a way that does actually keep you invested. It really makes you feel like a smartass despite the story just giving you the information. That's about it though. It is pretty clear Arkham Origins was made to fill a gap, so Arkham Knight could be developed for longer, and it could have been a lot worse. I do think people are way too harsh with the criticism, calling the story trash, etc, but it definitely isn't the best narrative in the series. It's not terrible, you know, it's actually pretty decent. It slides quite well into the overall story of the Arkham games. If you're enjoying this video, smash that like button. A lot of criticism was thrown at Arkham Origins for its lack of gameplay improvement, and I can see why. This is pretty much Arkham City with a few new gadgets, but that's not bad, especially for the price Arkham Origins is currently selling at. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, and that sums up the gameplay here. However, I just finished playing through Arkham Knight, and Arkham Knight's gameplay is so much better than Origins. It's faster, deeper, and more enjoyable overall, but what we get with Arkham Origins is good enough. You do unlock a new gadget, which basically makes your fists have electric shocks, and it's really cool, but at the same time kind of pointless, and it really doesn't change the gameplay at all, apart from making you slightly more overpowered than you already were. Side missions are your usual Arkham style of content. Different villains get different side quests, varying from detective work to stopping bombs, and of course, Riddler trophies. I always tell myself that I want another Arkham game, but then I remember the Riddler exists. Exploration is really slow. Once again, I just finished playing Batman Arkham Knight, and the speed at which you traverse in that game is so fast compared to Arkham Origins, so Arkham Origins feels really slow and can become quite tedious, and the developers even added fast travel this time around, and you can tell why. Gliding is just too slow to be enjoyable anymore, especially with the way the world has been designed. Speaking of that, world design is pretty lackluster. It's Batman Arkham City with a bridge you can cross to a new section of the city that really feels like Arkham City, so the world design really just feels like a reskin of Arkham City because that's exactly what it is. Boss fights are pretty lackluster unfortunately, but there is more in Origins alone if you combine every Arkham game, not counting side quests. It's your classic fight multiple enemies at once or fight one-on-one, countering every move they throw at you. The standout boss fight is Bane's last fight that I won't spoil. Very reminiscent of the Mr. Freeze boss fight, but just not quite as good in my opinion. They are more cinematic, but the gameplay isn't really adapted for boss fights. It's the same gameplay but with more cinematics a lot of the time, and it's quite disappointing to be honest. The stealth is your classic Batman stealth. You stalk your enemies and pick them off one by one with all your gadgets, and it's just as satisfying as every other Arkham game. But it is like every other Arkham game, so don't go in expecting some groundbreaking stealth either. Free flow combat is great as well, and while Arkham Knight whoops every Arkham game's ass when it comes to gameplay, there is still plenty of fun to be had here with Arkham Origins, especially with the tiny additions like the electric gloves, at least that's what I call them, along with all the other slightly new enemy archetypes. All in all, Batman Arkham Origins is a good game and was heavily criticised, probably because people expected something much more grander in scale compared to what we actually got, especially coming off the back of Arkham City. Plus the lack of gameplay advancements, I guess you could say. If you want more Arkham, I'd say definitely buy Arkham Origins. I'd give it a solid 6 due to it being pretty much a reskin of Arkham City. That's what I can say. It's Arkham City, just slightly bigger, with a slightly worse story, pretty much. That's how I can sum it up quite well. So if you want more Arkham, buy Arkham Origins. Thank you for watching.